Today I'm going to talk about living everyday wonder as we wrap up the theme for the month, which is living everyday wonder, and the theme for the year, living everyday wonder. And actually, today is prove it. And for me, when I think of prove it, it takes me back to some of my childhood days when we would go like, oh yeah, we'll prove it. We'll prove it. And so in that childlike exploration, in that childlike prove it, like show me the money, prove it to me, make it plain, make it real, we're actually going to take a look at proving the science of mind philosophy. And we're going to look at just exploring and dissecting and unpacking this idea that this is a science and spirituality, and that science really speaks to proving things. It's scientific, and so there's always proof, there's always a formula in which we get to the conclusions that we get to, and spirituality being about our practice. So let's just take a look here at what we have in store today. Again, today is January the 30th, so it's prove it. And it's interesting what Ernest Holmes has to say about proving it. In his own words, he says, one of the greatest difficulties in the new order of thought is that you are likely to engage and to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. Too little practice and too much indulging in theory. And though today we are going to talk about it, my hope and my encouragement and what I am calling forth is that over the next 11 months of 2022, that we actually engage in practice, and that we stop theorizing so much, and that we actually engage in practice. Because we have this theory that I become what I practice. And so imagine proving that. Imagine at the end of the year that we've engaged in our practice so deeply and so heavily and so wonderfully and joyously that we're actually demonstrating in our lives that which we talk about, right? We talk about a lot of stuff, talk. But when we prove it, we actually must take some action, and not only take that action, but as a result of the action, we get to see something different. So I want to bring up this slide here, and this is a scientific method, and I'm going to come back to religious science and science of mind in just a moment, but I want to take us to this place where we begin to think scientifically, and we begin to actually see that there's what I like to call a method to the madness. And so we might have an observation in our life. What is the observation in your life? As you begin to ask questions. Oh, I notice that I'm super negative, or I notice that my bank account isn't where I want it to be, or my health isn't where I want it to be, or my relationships and friendships are not where I want it to be, or I notice that my career is not where I want it to be, or this place is where I want it to be, or other places are not. And so we start off with this observation and this question, and we begin to then move into the researching the topic, and we come up with a hypothesis. And for us, sometimes our hypothesis, well, not sometimes, part of our language is change your thinking, change your life, and that's a hypothesis. A hypothesis is meditation helps to lower your blood pressure, or meditation helps to shift and change your body chemistry, or meditation shifts and changes your mind so that you're responding more instead of reacting more. And so what begins to happen is that as we have this hypothesis, we have to prove it. So we begin to test it with our experiment. And so if it's around money, if it's around our career, our job, if it's around our serenity and our tranquility, that meditation can bring us to that place, then what we do is we test it. And how we test it is we must take some action. We must actually do something to increase something or reduce something, to increase our happiness, our joy, our experience of loving life, or to reduce the feeling of stress, anxiety, pain, fear, things of that nature. And after a certain amount of time of doing this practice or doing this thing over and over again, we analyze the data. We begin to take a look at how we're feeling, our temperature. We begin to really analyze our body. And from there, we can report the conclusions. And then we come to another question or observation. And so what's interesting about that formula or that method is that is the way science proves a hypothesis, a question. That is how we begin to say, yeah, A plus B equals C, or it doesn't, based on taking some action. And so what we've been talking about all month is that spiritual living doesn't happen on the meditation cushion, and it doesn't happen on Sunday mornings. And that's exactly why we're changing up what we're doing, because Sunday mornings is a wonderful time to get together and hear an inspirational message, possibly begin to practice meditation or some other spiritual practice. But spiritual living is actually a way of life. And so what our goal at Vida Spiritual Learning Center is to actually begin to provide bite-sized spirituality, so that on a daily basis and on a regular basis in everyday activities that you're applying the spiritual tools and the principles in all of the areas of your life, so that when you do that and when you begin to practice, that you're making different choices for yourself, that your thinking is clearer, and that what begins to happen is that you're living spiritually and it feels like a miracle, but it's just everyday wonder as a result of your spiritual practice. Now, we gotta, and I say got to, right? Like that's all my English slang, right? My New York English slang. Like we gotta get with it in that action that is necessary are the steps that we take on a regular basis. It's interesting to watch people in 12-step program, because that is a life of action. They are actually, seeking a higher power. They're actually seeking a relationship with source energy, with the divine, with spirit, that they're actually seeking this relationship with the divine, or recognizing that their life is the life of the divine in such a way that they're able to put down the drugs, the alcohol, the weapons of mass distraction. Now, if we take a look at, the scientific method and the way that circular method went, once you have the hypothesis and you put it into action, you get to analyze the data, and the data around 12-step recovery is actually pretty strong. And the data around religious science and science of mind and this philosophy and incorporating it in our lives is also very, very strong. The science is objective, and the science just says, hey, does doing this get you the demonstration? Does it get you the outcome that we think it will have? Yes or no? And sometimes, we need to ask a different question and to have a different practice to actually get to that place. However, it is been proven over and over and over again that using our philosophy, using our spiritual tools, actually provides personal transformation. I know that my life has been transformed as a result of these personal tools, these spiritual tools, and they provide this personal transformation. So, it's easy to say, oh, something doesn't work, especially if we don't try it, or if we only try it once or twice, or just kind of do it haphazardly. But it's another thing to actually have a hypothesis and put some things into place to actually really see if it does work. I want to share this with you, and that is, Ernest Holmes says that I would rather see students of this science prove its principles than have them repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. He'd rather have us prove its principles. And the only way we can prove them is by incorporating them in our lives. How are you incorporating these spiritual tools in your life? And if you haven't, and if you're not, or if you need the reminder that it's time to begin again and to practice it again, the question then becomes like, what is it that you want to feel? Do you want to have that sense of affluence or abundance or prosperity, or, do you want to live in balance, or feel a sense of completeness, or be so trusting in the wisdom and the inner intelligence of your life? Do you want to experience freedom and safety and joy and health and compassion? Well, if you want to experience any one of these things, all of these things can actually be made manifest and can actually be demonstrated. And they're demonstrated when we actually engage in what we've been posting here on a weekly basis, what we practice daily practice. So our meditation practice, our stillness, sitting in the stillness and in the silence, our treatment, which is really prayer, our study, our journaling, our visioning on a daily basis. And then on a weekly basis, what are the things that you're engaging in? Coming here, watching this talk, watching this inspirational message is part of education. It's part of taking it in. But actually being in beloved community, being with a group of love-minded people who are interested in the advancement of science of mind, that are interested in the advancement of a world that works for everyone. That's being in the beloved community. And that is so key and so very important. Seeing a spiritual counselor, giving as a spiritual practice, that act of tithing and giving as a spiritual practice is going to be important. And it's important because when we're practicing certain things, then we're able to then analyze the data. And so here's some of what I want to share with you, and that is this idea of prosperity, of abundance, of wealth, of opulence. In so many countries, so many cities and towns and states, people want to experience abundance, and yet there's a simple practice. So if this is you, there's a simple practice that you can begin engaging in on a regular basis, and you can prove. Here's an opportunity to prove it, right? So just changing your thoughts, change your thinking, change your life. What begins to happen is as you begin to change not only your thoughts, but the way that you think, that actually begins to shift and change, and you begin to actually recognize and see life differently. When you change the way you see things, the things you see change, right? But the reason that happens is because then all of a sudden your beliefs start to change, your behaviors start to change. And so around the area of abundance, the idea is to not only change your thoughts, but to change your beliefs and to change your behaviors so that you experience abundance. Oh, well, I think positive. Thinking positive is not going to work simply on its own. There has to be an action that's taken. And that action that is taken is in the book of Malachi, when the scripture says that bring me the whole tithe, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me. That is also sometimes described as prove me this, test me in this, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour you out so much blessing that there will not be enough room to store it. I remember singing a song like that, open up, open up and pour you out a blessing that you will not have room to receive it. Now, Edwene Gaines, in her book, A Simple Guide to Unlimited Abundance, she talks about this. She talks about her story and her experiment and her practice of tithing. Tithing is, giving a tenth of whatever it is that you have, whatever it is that you receive, if you give a tenth of it. Now, if you can imagine 10 rolls of toilet paper, and you have 10 rolls of toilet paper, and you give one of those toilet papers to Vida's Spiritual Learning Center, and you say, here, Vida, this is for you. And what do you have left? You have 9 rolls of toilet paper left. Like, what can you do with 9 rolls of toilet paper? You can probably do a lot, right? If you have $100 that you have received, right, and you take $10 and you gift that, you bring that to Vida Spiritual Learning Center as a gift and a tithe, you have $90 left in which you can do so much. Sometimes we don't even recognize the abundance that is right in front of us by simply practicing that when we receive, if we simply give a tenth, 10% of that we are actually recognizing our abundance in the 90% that we get to keep. Now imagine, would you rather have 90% or would you rather have nothing? See, so many times, folks have nothing, or they don't want to prove it. This is a way that you can prove it. Now, it's interesting because Edwene, when she shares her story of giving her last dollar, nobody's asking you to give your last, but she gave her last dollar. And Edwene is one of the most prosperous and abundant and wealthiest people that I know. Like, not Oprah status, of course, or that magnitude, but OMG, like, she has enough to spare, enough to share. And this is, her message in the four laws of prosperity, A Simple Guide to Abundance. She outlines exactly how to do it. Are you willing to take the action? I said it again, in 12-step program, the reason it works is because people in recovery take action for their lives and they practice. And the same can be said for Science of Mind, that as we begin to practice, that we begin to practice and practice and practice and practice, we get back to that place of proving our life, proving our demonstration. I know that when I was a practitioner, I can tell you that when I was a practitioner, and every time we had to renew our license, we had to submit stories of when we actually worked with clients and worked with everyday people, and through prayer we were able to have a demonstration. I remember one time, and I'll say this, and this was a really fun demonstration for me. I remember being in a Lowe's or a parking lot, or like a Home Depot parking lot, and I saw this car. It was amazing. It was blue. It was just an amazing sport car. It was a 2-seater, and when I saw this person, drive up in it and get out, I was like so excited. And I was like, congratulations, that's a great looking car. What is it? And that person said, oh, it's a Saturn Sky. And I said, oh, my name is Sunshine. I gotta have one of those, Sunshine in the Sky. And she said, oh, well, you have to order it. It takes about 6 weeks, and you have to order it before you get it. And I was like, well, congratulations, enjoy your car. And I was just so excited, and I automatically put myself in that car, Sunshine in the Sky. And a few days later, I was at home, and I was like, oh yeah, that's Saturn Sky, let me look it up. And I get on my computer and I go to Saturn and I take a look, and all of a sudden I begin to create my car, because it's like build your own car here. And and it was like, I was like, oh, what color do I want? And I wanted the sunlight yellow, and I wanted the 20-inch tires, and the windscreen, and the mud flaps, and all of these things, and I just started designing my car. And I picked up my phone and I called and I said, hey, I want to get one of your Saturns. And they were like, oh yeah, bring in $1,000 and in 6 weeks we can have your car. I go, you don't understand. I want my car today. I want my car now. And then, they were like, well, it's going to take 6 weeks. And so I was like, all right, thanks. And then I looked up another dealership and I called again, and I was like, hey, I want one of your Saturn Skies. And they were like, oh, well, we got a gray one over. I'm like, no, not gray. You don't understand. I want yellow with, and I started to describe the car that I had created on their website. And the guy says, oh, that sounds exactly like the car my general manager drives. And I go, you don't understand, that's my car. And the guy on the other end of the phone said, okay, give me your number, I'll let me call you back. And probably about a half an hour later, he calls me back and he goes, yeah, I talked to my general manager. If you want the car, come and get it, it's yours. And it was like, okay. And I did a trade-in and got the car, and there it was, Sunshine in the Sky. And what is that? What is that? Is that just the power of my word, or is that actually putting my faith into action? And so as we prove it today, as we begin to use our prayer, our meditation, our visioning, our speaking the word, speaking it with conviction, our tithing, as we begin to give as a spiritual practice, as we begin to actually put these things into place and practice these things, our life proves what we've been practicing. And so I want to leave us today with our affirmation, our affirmation for the week. And it's pretty simple. The affirmation for the week is, I become what I practice. And my invitation to each of us is over the next 11 months. Let us become what we practice. Are we practicing negativity, despair, anxiety, strife, pain, sorrow, lack, limitation? Or are we indeed then practicing the things that we want to have, like affluence and opulence and clarity and freedom and peace? And so if indeed we want to prove it, then let's go ahead and prove it by remembering that I become what I practice. Until next week, know that you are loved. Bye for now.